Dogworks Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dogworks. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com. You can support this podcast on patreon.com/First Paw Media. From First Paw Media, sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company, this is the Dog Driver Show. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert Forto and Kourosh Partow.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Robert and I'm here with my co-host KP and we are the Dog Driver Podcast. And today we have a guest calling in from Ohio. His name is Ron Hayden. KP, what do you know about Ron?
I know Ron. I met him actually a few years back at a few of the ISDRA, International Sled Dog Racing Association conferences, and he's a sprint musher, limited class, 4 and 6, I believe, and he's been doing this for many years, and he has actually a few of our dogs, I believe, or our lines in Ohio. Ron, welcome to the show, and tell us who you are and how you started in the sled dog sport.
I started about 12 years ago now, I believe. I had adopted a couple Siberians, like most people. Never really had any plans of running sled dogs. I think it was 4 Siberians at the time, and I saw a ad for a sled on Craigslist. Picked it up for, I think it was $75. Went home and tried it out. It was the biggest disaster ever. It was just a giant mess in the front yard. And then from there, kind of just tried it again the next day and the next day. Started to like it. And then met some of the other people with GLSDA, Great Lakes Sled Dog Association, and went from there.
And how many dogs do you have now, and where do you race?
Right now I have 10. I have 2 of those Siberians left, and then the rest of my dogs are from Ken and Lori,
Chesex. And so you live in kind of in town, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, I'm about half hour south of Cleveland, pretty much in suburbia.
And I've heard at one of these banquets where we were together, you told us the stories about having neighbors close and what you have to do to keep the peace with the neighborhood. Tell us about urban sled dog owning.
Biggest thing is, I have to always ask when I'm buying a dog from somebody is, how are they in the kennel? I have one neighbor in particular that he doesn't like to even hear a dog making noise, period. So it's a balancing act of keeping them exercised enough in the yard that they're not being noisy and staying on top of basically anything. My yard's visible from a main road, and so. And
do you have to are your dogs in a kennel?
So I have they're all on spinners in the yard. The biggest issue now is the village that I live in. Their zoning laws are considering doghouses accessory structures. So I'm building a doghouse deck so that it's one structure for their houses.
So each doghouse is a structure in your zoning?
Yep, sadly.
So you have an apartment complex in your dog yard then, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
That is crazy. So tell us about your training and what you do to exercise your dogs and be competitive in dryland and sled races.
So my closest training trails are about 45 minutes away. So typically I work 24 on, 48 off. So usually when I get off of work in the morning, I'll go right home, water, load up, and then I'll drive out to the trails and train. Since we don't get a ton of snow here in my area, I'm predominantly on a Risden heavy rig for most of the season. And so I'll train the 2 days that I'm off of work. They'll get a rest day, and then usually 2 days again, and then I'll give them 3 rest days and just repeat that cycle for most of the season.
And do you do mainly dry land or sled races out there?
I do both. I did more dry land this year than I ever have in the past. I had bought my first dry land racing rig in 2020. Before that, I was always just borrowing rigs. So this year, we did 4 dry lands, and then I think it was 6 sled races. I enjoy the sled races significantly more than the dry land racing, though. Just the dry land racing is great speed training to get them off of that Risden heavy rig.
What classes do you do in dry land or in sled?
I do 6-dog in dry land as well as in sled, and then I actually just got a mountain bike from Rich Kisseloff last season, so I'm going to try bike touring this year as well.
Also, you're going to do bike touring and the 6-dog class with a rig?
That's the goal.
That's good. That's good. And what about on sled? 6-dog?
Yeah, 6-dog.
And do you get any snow to practice at home, or you have to go to different places or dog camps to practice on sled?
So about 45 minutes east of me is our snow belt, and we get typically about 100 inches of snow a year there. The problem is we'll get snow and then it'll melt, so it's constantly a freeze-thaw cycle there. So I don't get to train on sleds much at home. So typically I'm driving up to Mandy Collins's or Chesik's to train.
And they have a maintained trail open to guests and friends?
Yes.
And usually for running 6-dog class, how many miles do you practice?
So I try to get them up to at least 8 miles by the end of sled season.
Oh, okay. Tell me about your dogs. How old are they? Where are they from? Males, females?
So predominantly, actually no. Now I have more males than females. So I have predominantly younger dogs now. They all go back to Ken and Lori's white dogs, so Cyrus and Wind and Fog. I always joke with Kenny because the first dog I bought from them was Fog off of their 2012 Rondi team. And she's the one that was leading for him on the 3rd day that almost blew it for him. So I always joke with him saying that's why he gave me such a good deal on her. But they're all the Chesik lines, anywhere from 2 years old to my oldest right now is 6.
And any brothers and sisters, any siblings, or no, they're all different from each other?
I have 2 females from a litter 2 years ago from them, and then everybody else is just their own.
Okay. Any plans for doing your own breedings in your litters?
Not really at this time. Predominantly still buying. I figure until I can't buy better, I'm not going to do my own breedings.
That's actually a very, very wise decision. I did that for years myself. I think it's way easier to buy a yearling or an adult or even a older dog than raising puppies from scratch.
Very much so.
Tell me about your nutrition. What do you feed?
I feed a Nookshook, and then I also supplement with a beef mix that I get from mid-Michigan area.
And do you maintain the same diet year-round?
Yes, I do. The only thing, I don't feed as much meat in the summertime, only because it's 6 hours to get to where I get my meat. So I can't really get it back home while it's still frozen. So in the summertime, I still feed the Nookshook. I feed the 32 year-round. Just feed a little bit less in the summertime.
Just out of curiosity, how much is a pound of meat in mid-Michigan?
So I want to say we're getting it for 40 cents a pound.
Wow. Yeah, that's like 3 times cheaper than us. Robert looked at me, he's like, wow.
Don't quote me on that, but I think that's about what it breaks down to.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. Send some meat to us, please, to Alaska. That is pretty good. So when do you start your, I always ask the Midwest people about their training program and when they start, because you guys, when we are done in Alaska, which is pretty much now, you start doing the dryland spring races. Is that correct?
Correct. So there's 2 more spring drylands in Michigan. One Easter weekend and one the weekend following, I believe. So for us here in my area, it rains pretty much from February until June. So my spring training isn't very good just because of how muddy everything is. But I still try to get up and do those spring drylands, and then I always shoot for Labor Day weekend being my first hookup for fall training. The last probably 3 years that hasn't worked out, and it's been typically first or second week of October before it's cooled down enough.
Yeah, interesting, because here it's almost the opposite. By this time, when the snow is leaving our trails, we can't train anymore because it's a lot of swamps, a lot of wetland and stuff like that, and usually you cannot get back on dirt ATV training till end of August or mid-August or something like that.
Okay.
When it's colder. So how do you organize between basically what I'm understanding, your season starts when are the first dryland races, in September or August?
No. First dryland races are typically end of October. I usually don't have enough runs on my dogs to do those ones, so I won't typically start doing the drylands until in November.
Okay, and
then
sled races?
If I were to do them all, I believe we have 5 drylands in the Midwest in the fall.
And then how many in sled races that you can go to in the Midwest?
So if I were to only stay in Michigan and Wisconsin, I would have been able to do 7 this year.
And then how many spring dryland?
So there's 2 in Michigan, and then I know they have more out on the East Coast in the New Hampshire area. I have never actually traveled east of Ohio, so.
That's quite a bit. I remember when we moved to Alaska, I was so excited about all the races, preliminaries and everything. One year I did 16 races. It was like every weekend I was racing. I was so happy. But the way that you're talking about, Ron, you can probably get easily 12, 13 races if you want between dryland and sled races.
Yes, it's definitely wears on me by the end of the year because we were driving anywhere from about 1,200 miles one way, 1,300 miles one way, and our shortest race was 380-something miles one way to get to.
Ron, I have a couple of questions about all of these races. Pardon my ignorance, but where do you stand in these races? Are you on the top podium, in the middle, or the back? Where?
So this year in Dryland, I was top 4, and then in sled racing, I was in our top 5.
That's pretty dang good. And for somebody that lives in literally the suburbs of a very large city, that's a big deal compared to a lot of dog mushers, sprint drivers that live, a much more rural lifestyle. So do you do this purely out of passion? I know that you're a full-time firefighter and that's what pays the bills, but are you doing this purely out of passion? Are you doing it just for the love of the sport? A combination? What drives you to go 1,200 miles for a race?
For the love of the sport, I guess, and I am very competitive. So, it started as, I'm doing it because it's fun, and as each year I am improving, and so now I want to drive to these races to show what my team can do for living where I do.
Excellent. KP?
1,200 miles. Where is that race?
So that's just to get us into the Rhinelander area of Wisconsin. So there's Merrill. This year there was Hill Creek Dog Dash and Rhinelander, and then there's Land O'Lakes in Wisconsin. That one was about 1,400 miles.
Wow. Do you go north or south to go there?
I go north.
To the UP, huh?
I'll take the extra 120 miles total to avoid Chicago.
Okay. Wow. That's a long way. My closest race is a mile from home.
I would absolutely love that.
And it happened in the past that I forgot my harnesses, and I come home and grab them back up.
Oh man,
that is why Alaska is good for dog mushing, I guess. But what are your plans for next year, Ron?
Hopefully, same thing as this year. Try to do as many dry lands as I can, and shoot for the Midwest circuit that I did this year, and possibly may try to come up in March and do some of the limited circuit up there in Alaska.
Wow.
This guy has big goals.
He is serious.
He is serious.
All right.
That's awesome, Ron. Because I say that, and I don't mean to interrupt KP. I say that because almost every episode, we're well into 200 right now. He asks almost every guest, "Are you going to come to Alaska?" I think you say that
almost to everybody.
Almost everybody, and hardly everybody says yes. But Ron, he's ready. I love it.
He is coming.
I'm hoping.
Yes.
We'll see how it pans out and how my team's looking. I know the experience of coming up there, no matter what's worth it, but I would hate to make the 4,000-plus mile trip and come in last place at every race.
Are you coming alone?
No, if I come, it'll be with Mandy Collins.
Oh, Mandy Collins is coming. Okay. I'll switch my program. I'm going to start to run 6 dogs then. Giddy up.
We keep talking about it, and we're hoping this year's the year.
Awesome. Congratulations. That would be phenomenal. It would be an eye-opening experience for both of you. She's been here as a jockey once, I guess. But it would be fantastic to have you. And Alaskans, we love new people in our circuits. You'll see everybody's going to be very hospitable and friendly to you guys. And you'll cherish this experience for the rest of your life. I promise you that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Ron, so we can let you go to get back to your real job here. I just have one question for you. And in the past, I've asked for advice to give other mushers, but I'm changing this up a little bit. I'm going to ask you, where do you see the sport in 5 or 10 years from where you stand right now?
I think dryland's going to continue to grow, especially the smaller classes, the monosport classes. It's a lot more accessible for the everyday person who can't or doesn't have the desire to have 10, 15, 20 dogs. I think those classes, at least in the last 5 years around me, seem to have really exploded in popularity.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's really the at least the future of sprint mushing for now is that dryland for sure. KP, anything else for Ron before we go?
No, Ron, thank you so much for being part of the show. I know you're a busy man, and very seriously looking forward to have you guys in Alaska and see you in our circuit. Hopefully you can come a little bit earlier and do Eagle River Classic in our hometown track, and good luck with the rest of your spring season, and we'll see you hopefully at the ISDRA meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. On behalf of our guests and my co-host, this is Robert for the Dog Driver Show. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
From First Paw Media, this is the Dog Driver Show. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you can see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert Forto and Kourosh Partow. Our producer is Robert Forto and created for First Paw Media.